This presentation includes forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties. Actual results may differ materially as a result of various risk factors, including those described in the 10Ks, 10Qs, and 8Ks VMware files with the SEC.
Over a year ago, Las Vegas saw that the ability to provide better public safety services for both its citizens as well as for visitors was an important priority for both the city council, city manager, but also the CIO. We found that this was a perfect template upon which to build a powerful smart platform on top of which we could construct these smart applications that would solve a wide variety of different problems. Everything from identifying cars that are turning the wrong way down one-way streets to identifying people of interest or vehicles of interest due to Amber Alerts or other issues. Well, it wanted to be able to show value quickly, so we needed to be able to stand things up fast with a relatively small number of cameras and show things through nice dashboards that the dispatchers and public safety employees would be able to incorporate. We were able to do that nicely with VCF.
So what's great about VMware Cloud Foundation, the architecture, the architecture foundation always stays the same. It is not changing, and with this, even if it's in a global data center or in a micro data center, with the architecture staying the same, it can be easily redeployed, expanded. The scale in and out is very flexible, and that's what makes it really great. The platform needs to be always up and readily available. It is a self-sustained platform. It looks after itself. It lets you notify if there's a problem with the platform itself.
The beauty of this solution that we put together for Las Vegas is that we're able to build and go to market with solutions very quickly now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Gilmartin.
Good morning. It's great to have you guys here. It's funny, actually, when we were working on this keynote over the last couple of weeks, someone said, hey, did you know that this is the theater where Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone back in 2007? And I thought that was really cool, but then I look around now, I'm not sure that's exactly true. But it's still a great moment in technology. So I actually did go back and watch the keynote because we were talking about it. And I noticed something, a couple interesting things in that keynote. One is Steve Jobs is really good at giving keynotes. You know that, a little intimidating. But the other thing I noticed is he said something that was interesting. He said, once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And that made me reflect a little bit on my time at VMware. I've been here since 2006, and in those early days, thinking about the impact that ESX and virtualization have had on this industry, it's just amazing. Just huge, huge transformative impact. And then I was thinking about other opportunities I've had in my time at VMware to see other types of transformative technologies. Do you know this is the 5th anniversary since we launched vSAN back in 2014? And it's been incredible to see the kind of change that hyperconverged infrastructure has had on the industry and how people manage their data centers. And so I'm very excited today to talk more about sort of the future of HCI and talk about how we really can help future-proof your infrastructure and how we can build a bridge from your existing investments out to the hybrid cloud and out to modern applications, right? And this is really important. This is really important because today we see that every company is becoming a technology company, right? Expectations are changing constantly. They're just going up. And the expectations are from end users, from developers, from the leaders of the business, and they're looking for more from the technologists, looking more from IT. And the role of IT is changing. It's happening across every industry. It's happening in healthcare, financial services, farming, you name it. It's happening and changing really fast. And the problem is, a lot of traditional infrastructures are not really set up to go provide the agility that digital transformation requires. The silos between compute and storage and between network and other aspects of data center make it very difficult to be responsive to what the business is asking for, right? What we've seen over the last couple of years is hyperconverged infrastructure really has been able to help bring in more agility into the infrastructure, be able to break down some of the silos by combining compute and storage together, simplifying a lot of the management and operations inside that data center. And what's great about this also allows the organization to evolve from their existing investments in virtualization using the same tools and using the same skills that they've built up for a long time. Now, what this means is that this is having a big impact in the industry. This is forecast numbers from the 451 group over the next 3 years. You can see they expect HCI Hyperconverged to grow 50% in terms of workloads, while traditional infrastructure and converged infrastructure are going to decline. And I think that really speaks to the kind of transformative impact that HCI is having inside of organizations, inside of companies. There's a couple of reasons why we see that HCI is really winning, why this is happening. The first I touched upon already is this idea of operational simplicity. HCI really makes it easier to go manage the various aspects and various silos of the data center. We can bring them together. The second, though, is really around economics. We've seen huge cost savings tied in with HCI. A lot of this driven by that simplicity, but also driven by the fact that we can bring server technology to bear. We can bring in the economics of servers, and we also can bring the economic or the innovation cycles that are much faster with servers than with other types of technologies. And lastly, which is really the theme for this presentation, is that HCI can really future-proof the infrastructure, can really help unlock the hybrid cloud, right? It can help modernize your infrastructure, but do it at your pace, right? And leveraging your investments. But also be a platform to deploy all workloads, both virtual machines and containers, right? And being prepared for those modern applications. So touching on this idea of the economics, because this is always a critical part of any IT decision, and we have some new research from Forrester. And this is based upon interviews with VMware HCI customers. This is across all kinds of different industries, retail, software, services, et cetera. And it talks about the benefits of HCI over traditional infrastructure. And you can see some of the numbers in here, 72% reduction in total cost of ownership. This is self-reported. This is what's coming back from the customers themselves. 259% return on investment, right? So these kind of benefits are really substantial and significant. And what's interesting about that is it allows us to really think about core HCI, this core compute and storage hyperconvergence, really as the first step. We can also take the savings that we're getting and reinvest some of those savings into unlocking more strategic opportunities for the business. And start to think about how we can expand HCI into other parts of the data center. We start to bring network virtualization into hyperconverged infrastructure. We start to think about automation and operations as a core part of this hyperconverged infrastructure. And think about this as a full solution. And this is what we've really invested and worked on with VMware Cloud Foundation. Really looking at how do we build a full stack hyperconverged infrastructure and something that really can provide a simpler path to the private cloud, simpler path to building out the cloud capabilities that business is looking for their digital transformation. And we do this based on the ideas, and you heard in the video, of these standardized and validated designs, right, across all three of these different silos. And building in security and lifecycle automation into that infrastructure, right? Providing this platform, again, both for traditional and modern workloads. Part of what makes this Cloud Foundation solution so powerful, though, is actually the technology that's built inside, right? Pat talked about this a little bit yesterday in the keynote, talked about the fact that we have leadership across all elements of the stack, vSphere, of course, vSAN, #1 in hyperconverged infrastructure, #1 in appliances with LEMC as well, the VxRail. We have over 20,000 customers now on vSAN, #1 in network virtualization, #1 in cloud management. It's really sort of the coming together of all these technologies that allows Cloud Foundation to be the most complete private cloud available. But that's not enough. Private cloud is not enough. We know that, right? We talked a lot in, constantly this year, last year, about the idea that really hybrid is the future. And this is more research just saying the same thing. 57% of customers say that their future operating model will be hybrid IT, right? And so we need a strategy to move from that private cloud into hybrid cloud as well. And again, we view that hyperconverged infrastructure is that architecture. It is that architecture that allows us to build a consistent infrastructure that can span from the private to the public and even out to the edge and allow us to have consistent operations across all these things. So our point of view at VMware is that there's an opportunity here and a need that we're hearing from customers all the time to have a unified platform that cuts across all three of these different areas. So again, what we've been working on with Cloud Foundation is to extend it not just to be a private cloud infrastructure, but have Cloud Foundation across this full solution across both the private, the public, and out to the edge. And part of what we see, and we talked about this yesterday, as we do this, is we can start to make it easier to then manage across these environments and provide opportunities and option value as you think about how do you modernize your IT organization? How do you think about simultaneously being able to migrate to public cloud without the costly rework, without having to refactor applications? We can make it simple, fast, and economical to do that on this consistent infrastructure, moving from your existing data center out to a public cloud. While at the same time, we're on this platform by incorporating technologies we talked about yesterday and today, like Project Pacific, Tanzu, incorporating those into Cloud Foundation, we can make it possible to modernize in parallel your new applications. Right? So combination of migrate and modernize is kind of the right strategy that we're hearing from customers all the time about how they're going to move their IT organizations forward. And Cloud Foundation is the platform for doing all of this. Because we're seeing Cloud Foundation now really as the foundation for all kinds of public clouds as well. We, of course, have our offering as VMware Cloud on AWS, now available across 16 different locations, regions around the world. We also have our partnerships that we've talked about with Microsoft, with Google, with IBM, right? All powered by Cloud Foundation, that same consistent infrastructure. We have 70 plus cloud verified partners also building upon the same software stack. And we're starting to bring that same technology into the data center as a service with VMware Cloud on Dell as well, right? And so we have these options now where we can help you build and modernize your data center with Cloud Foundation, or we can provide service either through VMware or through our partners with that same consistent infrastructure and that same consistent stack. And so we found this to be a pretty powerful story and pretty unique in the industry. And so ultimately, going back to that theme that I want to open with, which is this idea of your future-proofing your infrastructure. Our goal here is to help you modernize your infrastructure at your pace. You can start with core HCI, evolve from your existing virtualization investments, and evolve that into the full stack. Evolve that into full stack HCI. But leverage the same tools and consistent operating model across on this whole journey. And then really then extend it out into the hybrid cloud, right? So this is a journey that you can pursue at your own pace and based upon the requirements and priorities of your organization. What we've also seen now, though, as people are going down this journey, is HCI is really becoming strategic infrastructure for our customers. You know, if you think back, I mentioned vSphere earlier, if you think back to vSphere in the early days and ESX, you know, started off at sort of the edge applications, you know, test dev, definitely low priority applications, and over time kind of moved into the mission critical. You see with HCI that it's gone through that same journey, and customers have gone through that same journey to the point now, though, that really is strategic infrastructure. We are seeing customers deploy HCI at scale with very impressive results. And you can see some of the results we have here around cost savings, around providing more agility and reducing provisioning times, and also helping to accelerate out the provisioning of projects and helping bring projects to market more quickly. Right? So these are powerful results and big transformations that we see our customers going through, leveraging the technologies available through hyperconverged infrastructure. But rather than me talk more about some of these examples, what I'd love to do is bring one of our customers on stage. Someone you saw yesterday in a video in the keynote is Paul Green, Chief Information Officer of Angel Medflight.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us here. You know, the video that they shared yesterday on Angel Medflight in the keynote, I found it very inspiring myself. Just an amazing mission that you have as an organization. Maybe you can just remind everybody a little bit about that mission and the services you provide.
We are a worldwide air ambulance. We fly fixed-wing jets, which are configured as a flying ICU. And we've been in all 50 states, 52 countries. Our longest flight as of today is 17,000 miles. Wow. We've helped out patients as young as 2 weeks old and as old as 103. And we do that across all clinical type scenarios, whether it's traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, oncology, flying neonates, really anything that would involve you needing to get to a higher level of care.
Yeah, you told some great stories in that video yesterday about sort of the impact that you've had with patient.
Absolutely. Yeah, with transplants especially, it's a hugely impactful thing to be able to move that patient to the right level of care when they need it to receive that transplant.
That's amazing. Now, talk a little bit about sort of the role of technology and IT in Angel Medflight's mission.
With Angel Medflight, one of the toughest things for us to figure out was what was our goal. Our ultimate goal was to provide the absolute best possible patient experience. And in order to do that, we needed to look back at what we were currently doing and figure out how to move forward. And we did that through technology. One of the things that was the biggest challenge for us is medical record charting. With medical record charting, it was cumbersome. We had different devices that were extremely complicated to use. The traditional model is either like a Zoll Toughbook or paper charting. We wanted to really change that. We wanted to be able to have medical record charting available to us at 40,000 feet, and we wanted it to be live, as live as we possibly could. We were able to do that in part because of the VMware HCI stack. We built our own custom chart that runs on the iOS platform, so we can put iPads in the hand of all of our clinicians worldwide. And we run that through our own server that's internal as well as a couple of data centers that run it on AWS.
So you touched a little bit in there on VMware HCI. Maybe talk a little bit more about how VMware has been involved in helping.
VMware really started everything that we've done. Right from the very beginning, figuring out how to provide at scale an app that you could have worldwide, you needed to really have the technology to be able to scale that easily, with a small IT staff. We didn't want to have constant hardware. We didn't want to have to constantly be looking, for another solution. So with the introduction of HCI and having vSAN and the speed and the agility that we're able to maintain, it's amazing. And now with the possibility of moving to a hybrid infrastructure as we're growing, the company is growing rapidly. It's also allowing us to, serve more patients. And as we're serving more patients, we're finding that and the app matures, we're gonna have to take it to another level, and that's most likely gonna be a hybrid cloud infrastructure, and we'll keep that stuff that we need in-house, on our local SAN.
So how do you think about that hybrid cloud? Like, what are the key things that are important there?
Speed, easily, the ability to scale very quickly without adding staff makes the most sense.
So I imagine having a consistent infrastructure is pretty critical.
Very, very consistent, very, very simplistic across the board, and be able to understand everything from a single point of view. I mean, I don't know if there's another product out there that gives you that availability.
That's fantastic. Well, great story, very inspiring story, and great mission. So thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. That's great. So, like I said, very inspiring mission, and another great example of how hyperconverged infrastructure can help provide that kind of agility and help the organization achieve a mission, which is so critical. And we've seen this, kind of adoption happening very broadly. Here's some more examples of the types of scale that we're seeing. This is actually data we're collecting back through some of our phone home technologies. You see the type of scale, the type of capacity that we're seeing in vSAN and in HCI. And this really, again, extends across all kinds of different industries. And we're seeing this consistently. Again, as I mentioned, we have 20,000 customers on vSAN now. And we're seeing just the type of transformational impact across all kinds of industries. And we're also seeing this across all kinds of applications as well, right? So, again, talking about future-proofing, really seeing now HCI becoming a platform that does support both traditional applications and modern applications. On the business critical side, we've seen HCI really move from traditionally, it started out as virtual desktops, it started out as sort of test dev, tier 2 apps, but now we see HCI really in the mission critical space. Lately, we've seen a lot more around Microsoft Exchange, around SAP HANA. Interestingly, with SAP HANA, we're the first certified platform on Cascade Lake. We have the best virtual machine density. We have 1.5 terabyte per socket memory support. So really great support in our HCI platform for these types of really scale up mission critical type workloads and applications. But at the same time, starting to see some really interesting adoption and new adoption of some of these modern applications. We're seeing Hadoop deployed on vSAN and HCI. We're seeing things like Splunk. We're seeing things like Cassandra, things like DataStax. And to talk more about this, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who's Jonathan Ellis, one of the co-founders and CTOs of DataStax, to come and join me on stage. Jonathan, thanks for joining me.
Morning, John.
It's been a great kind of partnership so far, but to open it up, maybe you can talk a little bit about what DataStax does and it's all about, what customers are doing.
Yeah, so just as you had on your previous slide, you had the DataStax logo and the Cassandra logo, and those things go together because DataStax sells an enterprise version of Apache Cassandra. And what you get with Cassandra traditionally is you get a multi-region, multi-cloud, highly available data management at scale. And what we're seeing with modern application development is even more interest in our enterprise features around security, around integrated search, and real-time analytics. And what these give you is faster time to market and improved decision-making.
Now, sometimes people are a little skeptical about, do I need to run these modern apps on top of a virtualized platform and what's the value? But we have 100 joint customers now. Maybe you can talk to me a little bit about sort of what we're seeing together, DataStax and VMware.
Yeah, DataStax and VMware together provide a simple, consistent interface to data management and application management. And I'm going to give you the short version today. I'd love to invite everyone to stop by our booth at the HCI zone to learn more. But the short version is that when you're building a modern application, you want the scale and the performance of a distributed database like DataStax, but you also want simplified and centralized management of everything you're doing. And VMware delivers that. So our joint customers are seeing value from automating full stack management and maintenance tasks.
Yeah. So rather than have a separate silo of a technology over here, have a consistent way I manage across all those different applications.
Exactly, and specifically with vSAN, we also have a technical advantage because if you're deploying on bare metal, you scale your DataStax database by adding machines, which is fine as far as that goes, but when you're a VMware HCI customer, you also have the option of adding memory or CPU to running database instances, so it's a lot more flexible.
That's great, so you have flexibility about how you can scale out and scale up the application.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, you also have a lot of customers thinking about hybrid cloud. How do you think about hybrid cloud when it comes to DataStax?
Yeah, top of mind for our customers, just in general, not restricted to cloud, are ease of use, simplified management, and reducing costs. So expanding to cloud can be part of your strategy to achieve that, but only if you're not starting over from scratch in the cloud and if you're not introducing significant new complexities. So you don't want to be hiring new admins and new operators who understand the specific management challenges in each cloud. So VMware Cloud is a really great fit because it's a new data center just like your existing data centers, except it happens to be in the cloud of your choice.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, tell me a little bit about how you're thinking about the future now between VMware and DataStax. Kind of what's next?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we enable together is an incremental on-ramp to the cloud, and with VMware providing consistent management and DataStax providing data consistency between your environments. So as you said, we have over 100 joint customers, but I think that's just the beginning of awareness and adoption of our joint solutions.
I agree. Let's keep doing more together. Jonathan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so, again, the point there is what we're really seeing is some amazing kind of adoption and spreading out of this sort of unified platform for both traditional applications and modern applications, and really making it easy to manage across all of those. But to talk a little bit more now about the future of HCI and to talk a little bit more about and do some demos, let me introduce another great speaker and a great partner, Duncan Epping, Chief Technologist of Storage and Availability. Duncan.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
As John mentioned, I'll be talking more about what's new for HCI. Microphone, thanks. What's new for HCI, and more specifically, I'll be talking about some of the upcoming technology. Now, the keynote this morning was all about cloud-native apps, and I also will have a section about cloud-native apps. I will be talking about some of the native integration that we will be introducing, or actually already have introduced in vSphere 6.7 Update 3. After that, I will continue with some of the expanded infrastructure options that we will have available for both VMware Cloud Foundation and vSAN. And then I'm going to introduce John back up on stage, and we will cover some of the enhancements from a management and operations perspective. So let's drill down into the modern application aspect of things. Now, before I get started with this section, I would like to know from all of you if anyone is already doing something with container workloads or with Kubernetes, by show of hands. Okay, so that kind of says something, and I think this is something that I see at a lot of different events. So I do VMUGs all over the world, and whenever I ask this question, typically, 10% of the audience will raise their hand. Now, it's not because the rest of the audience is not interested, they are simply not there yet. This is definitely something that is happening, and whenever I have these discussions with customers, and when I had these discussions a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, customers would tell me, well, that's far, far away from us. Now, today, when I talk to enterprise customers, every single enterprise customer is doing something with containers and is looking to do something with Kubernetes or has already deployed Kubernetes. Now, reality for you guys, and for the majority of you guys, is that you're probably still doing these off-the-shelf soft deployments in a virtual machine. These cloud-native apps are substantially different. As you can see in this particular diagram, the cloud-native app consists of multiple different components. And that also poses a whole bunch of challenges. If you look at the slide says more applications and solutions will be deployed in the next 5 years than have been in the past 40 years. Now, if you look back at the last year and the amount of work that you guys have done, and you just imagine that that's probably going to triple, or maybe 4x or 5x, right? That's mainly due to the fact that these types of applications will have many more different moving components associated with them. IDC has done some calculations, and they've calculated that in the upcoming 5 years, we will see 500 million new cloud-native apps being deployed. That's a significant number, especially when you consider that there are only 300 million apps today, right? So that's a huge increase. Now, the big challenge for you guys is, I don't know if there are any managers in the room, but I can assure you that your managers will expect you to do the same amount of work or do more work with the same amount of people, I should probably say, right? That's definitely going to happen. Now, of course, as VMware, we've been looking at the space for a while. In 2016, we introduced vSphere integrated containers. And that was more or less our way to provide you an option to deliver containers on top of a vSphere platform. This was just a container-based platform. When we started talking to customers, they mentioned to us that they had some challenges around containers. One of those things was providing a persistent storage solution to a container. So why is that a problem? Because most of the container folks will tell you, well, containers are all stateless. Well, it's actually not really the case. If you look at the top 10 container-based workloads, 7 out of those top 10 will need to store some form of state somewhere. And guess what? You as the administrator will be responsible for that. As it was in the past, what you would need to do is you would need to create a VMDK. That VMDK would need to be attached to a virtual machine. Then within the virtual machine, you would need to plumb that particular VMDK and that particular device to the container. And then within the container, the application could start using the persistent volume. That's doable when you have 5 VMs and a couple of containers, but when you have 5,000 VMs and maybe 50,000 containers, and you need to create 100,000 of these VMDKs, it starts becoming really painful. So that's why we introduced Project Hatchway in 2017. This year, we introduced vSAN Cloud Native Storage. So this is our Cloud Native Storage control plane, which is available for vSAN, but on top of that, it also works with virtual volumes, for instance. So if you're one of those customers that actually has a virtual volume-based storage system, you can also leverage this platform. On top of that, going forward, of course, we are working towards providing even more integration with container-based or container orchestration platforms. We've already seen that in the keynote this morning with Project Pacific, and we're doing a lot in that space. Now, for those customers, and there are a few customers here that are doing something with container orchestrators, if you're one of those customers that prefers to use something like, for instance, Red Hat OpenShift or Google Anthos GKE on-prem, that is also fully supported with vSAN. So we have validated that together with Red Hat and together with Google to ensure that you as a customer actually have a choice. You can decide what type of solution you want to run on-prem. Now, there are many customers out there that are looking to deploy this. And the challenge for the majority of customers typically is getting this up and running. So this is why we work closely with Dell EMC and our Cloud Foundation team to ensure that we can provide you a solution which basically allows you to get Kubernetes up and running within minutes or hours, of course, depending on at which stage you would start setting up the Kubernetes cluster. But this is basically a turnkey solution for production-ready Kubernetes clusters. Not only will it provide the developers the speed and scalability that they will expect, it will also provide you, as the administrator, the right level of operational efficiency. It will provide you full stack integration, but on top of that, and I think this is the key part, end-to-end lifecycle management. So from one interface, you will be able, for instance, to update and patch your firmware and all of your drivers. All of that is part of the appliance. And last, and probably most important, is that it will come with full stack security. So NSXT is included. On top of that, you can also enable vSAN storage encryption. And vSAN storage encryption is really simple to enable. It's just one click, and you're done, right? And if you desire to do so, you can even provide a certain level of workload visibility by leveraging app defense. Now, I have been talking about cloud-native storage and cloud-native apps for a while, and I haven't actually shown you something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a demo. And in this demo, I have a Kubernetes cluster which runs on top of vSAN and vSphere, of course. And I already have a whole bunch of apps running. And what I would like to show you is the integration that we've delivered with our cloud-native storage control plane. Let's switch over to the demo. So as you can see, we have a regular vSphere cluster here. And if you look at the left side, you can see that I already have a Kubernetes cluster up and running. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Monitor. And then first, I would like to show you the new capacity view. This is a view that we introduced in vSAN 6.7 Update 3. And it shows you this really neat circular diagram, which makes it obvious instantly how much capacity is being consumed. Now, that sounds really logical to most of us, but in the previous release, it was kind of difficult to figure out how much capacity was consumed. So now you can see it with one glance on this particular screen. The other thing that we did is we introduced this category section. And within the category section, we actually show you what is consuming that particular capacity. So we see the VM decays. These are your virtual disks associated with virtual machines. But on top of that, we also see this new thing, and it's called block container volumes. It says attached to a VM, and these are persistent volumes that are associated with a container, and the container, or the application within the container, I should say, is storing its data in that particular volume. Now, it also says attached to a VM, so there can also be objects which are not attached to a VM. So these are containers, for instance, which are not running at a particular point in time, and you could, at some point in time, reuse those objects. Okay, so that's that new view. What I would like to show you next is what we have done from an integration standpoint. These are all of the different persistent volumes that have been created for our containers. Now, there's one at the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click See All, and now you see these labels popping up. These are the exact same labels as you will see in Kubernetes. So why is this important? Well, I think this is probably the biggest challenge that the majority of you folks will probably face when you start moving into the cloud-native space. The challenge here is the following. These guys speak a completely different language than we do, right? They think about things like Python, they think about containers, they think about Kubernetes, they talk about solutions like MongoDB, Cassandra, as we've already mentioned. A lot of these components you are probably not familiar with. So what we have done through this platform is we provide a level of integration that will allow you to talk the same language as the development team does or the DevOps team does. The other thing that we introduce is a cool way to filter for a particular application. So what we can do is we can, for instance, filter on Cassandra, and then now we can see all of the persistent volumes that are associated with Cassandra. So I have one persistent volume here, which is associated with the Cassandra container. So that's the vSphere side of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the Kubernetes side, and what I would like to do is I would like to select the Cassandra namespace, because I know there's a Cassandra environment in this case. Of course, if I look at persistent volumes, I can see the same persistent volume we have running in vSphere. The great thing here is that this particular volume ID actually correlates, of course, to the volume ID that you would see in vSphere. So if there's an issue with your environment, the developer phones you up, he can give you the volume ID and you can start troubleshooting it instantly. But that's not what I wanted to show you. What I actually wanted to show you is what happens when we start scaling up the application, because I think that is the important part. This is the Cassandra application, and what I'm going to do, it only has one instance in this case. So what I would like to do is I would like to increase the number of instances. So instead of having one instance, I would like to see 3 instances popping up. Now, normally if I would do this, or if the DevOps team would do this, because they are responsible for this, what would need to happen is they would need to phone you up. They would need to ask you if you can provide them 3 VMDKs. You will need to associate the VMDKs to a virtual machine. Within that virtual machine, it will need to be associated with a container. And then within the container, of course, the app can start using it, right? A lot of manual steps involved. And I think the first part was probably the most challenging part. They will need to phone you up. And as we all know, we don't prefer to talk to developers, right? So we're going to try to avoid that. So we created this plugin, which allows you to avoid talking to the developers. Because when they click OK, now all of a sudden, a second pod is being instantiated. And when I click refresh, you will see that a third pod has been instantiated. And when I click refresh again, I have 3 new containers. Not only will I have 3 new containers, but if I click on persistent volume claims, we also have 3 new disks, 3 persistent volumes. And these have been automatically associated with the virtual machines and with the containers. So you didn't get involved. Of course, when you would go to the vSphere interface and you would click on refresh, those same persistent volumes will show up in this interface. All of the information is available straight away. But that's not where we stopped. We will provide a lot more detailed information. If you will click on the details, you can see all of the information about the Kubernetes cluster that it's associated with. You can even have multiple Kubernetes clusters running in this environment. And of course, you could also see on which data store it is being stored. In this case, it's the vSAN data store. I can see which policy is associated with it and if it's compliant or not. On top of that, and I think that's probably important for the geeks amongst us, you can even see where all of the data is placed. So I can click placement, I can see which hosts the data is being stored for this particular persistent volume that is associated with that container. And I can even see on which disk the data is being stored. So a lot of information that you're able to retrieve both from Kubernetes and from vSphere through the cloud-native storage control plane that we introduced in vSphere and vSAN 6.7 Update 3. Can we switch back to the slides, please? So hopefully that kind of gave you an overview of what it is that we are doing in this particular space. And I realized that, not all of you are there yet, and that for some of you, well, it may be something that you will never end up doing, at least not until maybe after your retirement it may happen, but not in your lifetime at the job you're doing. So there are other things, of course, that we are focusing on. One of those things is expanding the options that we provide to you from an infrastructure perspective. Now, when we started doing vSAN, and I've been involved with vSAN since 2013, so the beta release, and when we started having these early discussions with customers, they typically would deploy vSAN in a greenfield deployment. So they would have some form of project, a new application would need to be deployed, and they started looking at introducing vSAN in their environment. However, these days, what we're starting to see more and more is that customers are replacing their hardware, their current infrastructure in their environment, but they would like to reuse the investment that they have from a storage perspective. Back in the days when we started out with vSAN, that was already possible, but with VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation, that was something that we did not allow with the very first releases. As it is today, and that is something that not a lot of customers realize, that is fully supported. If you are a VMware Cloud Foundation customer, or you're considering VMware Cloud Foundation, you're free to reuse the current storage investments. So if you have a fiber channel storage system, an NFS-based storage system, or preferably a virtual volumes-based storage system, you can have that sitting next to your vSAN data store. And of course, with virtual volume-based storage systems, the benefit would be that you could use the same policy-based management framework to manage your virtual machines as you would be using for vSAN. So you create policies to deploy your virtual machines, and depending on the decisions that you've made within that policy, the virtual machine would either be deployed on vVol-based storage or on vSAN-based storage, and within that platform, it will be stored the way you've mentioned in that particular policy. So those are the options that we have available for integrating your solutions into VMware Cloud Foundation today. Now, when it comes to these types of infrastructures, of course, one of the first choices you will need to make, what type of hardware you will be using. And over the past decades, I should probably say, we've really seen this pendulum swing from rack mount to blade mount. And when we introduced HCI, we've seen people moving back towards rack mount once again. Now, more recently, we've started to see these new type of infrastructures emerge. And some people would refer to them as composable infrastructure, primarily HPE. Dell EMC refers to it as kinetic. In both cases, what this actually provides you, in my opinion, is a really cool solution because it allows you to dynamically reconfigure these decoupled storage and compute solutions and at the same time present that to a vSphere, a vSAN cluster, or a VCF type of solution. In other words, when you have one of these solutions, you can determine the amount of storage resources that need to be assigned to the compute environment based on the workloads that is running within that particular cluster. So if it needs to have 5 disks, you can specify that through the UI. The great thing here is that VMware Cloud Foundation actually allows you to do that through the SDDC manager that comes as part of the solution. So, in my opinion, a truly unique platform. But that is not the only way to consume HCI. We've already heard a lot about VMware Cloud on AWS over the past 2 days. And this morning in the keynote, we've also seen a lot of news around VMware Cloud on Dell EMC. And I think this is probably one of the coolest solutions that we've introduced over the past couple of years. Why? Well, basically because it will provide you a cloud-like solution or experience within your own data center. What we are doing with VMware Cloud on Dell EMC is providing a new solution that is consumed as a service. In other words, you as the customer will phone up VMware if you want to procure a solution like this. We will be responsible for racking and stacking the configuration, of course, together with Dell. And after that, VMware will be responsible for maintaining, installing, configuring, and updating whenever needed. Also, when an issue arises in your environment, we will file a support request and we will resolve the support request for you. So you as a customer are only responsible at that point in time for the virtual machines that are running on top of this environment. So if you're not in the business of managing infrastructure and you prefer to focus on the application layer that sits on top, I think this is a very compelling solution. And while we are on the topic of as-a-service type of solutions, I think this is probably one of the most undervalued solutions that we have. I think it's probably also one of the best solutions that we have provided from a business unit perspective, and the key reason for it is the following. Whenever I talk to customers about their DR strategy, one of the arguments that they have for not having a DR strategy or a DR solution in place is typically cost, right? For the majority of customers, a second location or a third location is just not feasible. VMware Site Recovery exactly provides you that solution. It provides you a secondary location to which you can start replicating your data. So if anything happens to your on-prem data center, you can now fail over into VMware Cloud on AWS. This is what we refer to as the performance-optimized solution. Now, it has a minor downside because you will need to have a VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC up and running. And some of our customers said, you know, that sounds great, but I have a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 workloads. What can we do for those solutions? So I'm happy to announce that we are working on a solution that will provide you a cost-optimized DR as a service platform. In this particular case, you will not need to have an SDDC up and running. You are simply replicating your data to a low-tier native cloud storage solution, right? And if you need to recover, you can simply recover from this cloud storage into potentially an SDDC, or it could also be on-prem, of course. With that, we've reached the end of the expanded infrastructure section, and now John is going to come back up on stage and talk about the enhanced management and operations that we are considering.
Great, thanks, Duncan. We'll stay right there. We got one more demo to do. So as Duncan said, I'm going to talk a little bit about management and start by talking about our North Star. And when it comes to management, our North Star is really about delivering a consistent management plane for HCI, both in the cloud and on-prem, right? And so we want to provide this kind of choice. So we recognize that not one size fits all, right? And so we want to provide choice where customers will be able to choose the kind of management, where the management plane runs, but have a consistent experience regardless of whether you're running as a service or as an on-prem set of software. And what we want to do is, though, with this, ultimately, is think about how do we make management easier? And that's the key goal. Make it easier by moving from an integrated management to self-driving operations. And there's really sort of three main things that we're focused on. It's kind of a three-pronged strategy. The first is to unify, right? To get to a unified management where we start to think about the whole HCI stack and how we can manage across all the various components of compute, network, and storage. But also start to do more around how we provide proactive capabilities around that. One thing I really want to mention and highlight is a feature, a product or a service we call Skyline. Skyline is a proactive support service. If you haven't downloaded it or you tried it, I highly recommend it because it is really effective at helping identify misconfigurations or things you can do now to prevent outages or prevent issues in your infrastructure. But we're trying to build this kind of unified management experience. We're also trying to automate the entire experience. So we have end-to-end automation, public APIs, and full API set across the whole stack. And then third, we're trying to make it intelligent. Trying to make it self-driving, self-optimizing, so you can spend less time actually involved in the process of managing the infrastructure. Now, I know in today's keynote, we talked a little bit about our vision around this, and actually last year was when Pat first introduced this idea of the self-driving data center vision, right? And recognizing that, we talked about modern apps earlier, in this world where we're going to be deploying out these highly dynamic modern apps, it requires the ability to continuously adapt the infrastructure. And we find that there's this opportunity with machine learning and artificial intelligence to really do something unique around here. And so what we are working on, and we talked about Project Magna this morning, is really to take this data that comes from things like Skyline, that comes from our operations management, automation management tools, bring those together into a data set, and really think about how we can use reinforcement learning and build AI models to go and build a set of services that are self-tuning and self-optimizing. Right? And so what I want to do is turn it back over to Duncan to go again through another demo of Project Magna.
Thanks, John. Now, most of you have probably seen the demo this morning during the keynote. So what I'm going to be showing is something similar. What I want to make clear before I actually start a demo is what we did is we created a synthetic workload for this particular environment to ensure that we would provide Project Magna the ability to optimize the platform for that particular workload. So I'm going to go into the demo, and in this demo, what you'll see is the vRealize operations interface. And what I have is a couple of vSAN clusters, a couple of vSphere clusters. So I'm going to select the cluster that is part of my environment and of which I know that I have a potential problem. When I select the cluster, what I see is that it has a performance which is 48% lower than the industry average, right? As you can imagine, if there's something like that happens in your environment, that's probably going to be a challenge. Of course, I can start drilling down and I can start looking at the latency, at the read IOPS of this environment and start basically trying to figure out what would need to happen. But we don't need to do this because we have Project Magna available. So what we're going to do is we're going to enable Project Magna and we're going to tell it what it will need to optimize for. I will need to switch it on first. And after I've switched it on, I have a couple of options. I can specify that it needs to optimize for read performance, write performance, or balanced. Now, in this case, when I enable this is for the full data store. Of course, going forward, we will make sure that you will be able to do this on a per workload basis, because that's probably going to be more relevant for you as a customer. But for now, it's on a per data store basis. So I'm going to move 5 days forward, and as you can see, a huge improvement has occurred. We went from minus 48% to plus 20%. Now, the interesting thing here is the following. As soon as I start hovering over that blue line with the purple dots, it will actually show you all of the changes that were made at that point in time. This is not over the course of 5 days what I'm showing, but it's actually over the course of 24 hours. So depending on the workload at that particular point in time, certain advanced settings are going to be changed to ensure that you're actually meeting the goals that you've specified in the UI. Of course, you can see what the read latency is at that point in time. You can see what the read IOPS are. But more important, you can also see what the cost is associated with the changes that were made to the platform. So we can see if there was a memory cost associated with it or just general resource allocation cost for these particular changes. That is what we are doing with Project Magna. I think it's a truly unique solution. And going forward, of course, we will be adding additional ways of optimizing your platform.
Perfect, Duncan. I imagine we'll start to extend that out across beyond vSAN into other parts of the infrastructure as well.
Definitely the plan.
Excellent. Great. Thank you again.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. So to summarize this section, we talked earlier about this idea that Cloud Foundation, we really optimized and built that to be this hybrid cloud platform. And now with what we're doing with Project Magna and beyond is really thinking about how do we bring intelligence as an intrinsic component to make this an intelligent, self-driving hybrid cloud platform. So now what I want to do is I want to wrap this up and summarize what we talked about today. As I mentioned in the beginning, the theme here was really about how do you future-proof your infrastructure and how can hyperconverged infrastructure be the architecture to help you go do that. And there are 3 kind of key big ideas that we hit upon, kind of themes throughout the presentation. The first is this idea of unlocking the hybrid cloud, having consistent infrastructure across public, private, and edge, and be able to have consistent operations across all 3 of those environments. The second is this idea of being able to modernize at your pace. A couple ideas in there. One is being able to have a journey from core HCI, which is really vSphere and vSAN, out to the full stack and out to that hybrid cloud, and be able to go along that journey at the pace that makes sense for your business, realizing benefits every step of the way. But also to take that journey while also being able to incorporate the investments you've already made. Duncan talked about storage, you talked about network. Be able to incorporate those investments into that journey as well. And third, making sure we're building a platform that allows you to deploy all workloads. We don't want to create new silos in your infrastructure. We want to create a platform that supports both your traditional applications, your virtual desktop applications, mission-critical applications, and your new cloud-native and container-native applications that your developers are looking for, and have one platform that allows you to have a consistent operational model across all of them. We feel if we can do these 3 things, we can help you achieve some really transformative results in your infrastructure and ultimately for your business, and help your business with its digital transformation. What I'd like to do is invite you to learn more, right? And in any keynote, we can only kind of hit a number of ideas at a pretty high level. A couple of ideas for how you can dig in more deeply. One is visit our HCI zone at the Solutions Exchange, We also have a lot of sessions. We called out 3 here, but there's a lot of sessions on this. 3 here, a little more on Project Magna in the first one, a little bit more around cloud native and container native storage and Kubernetes. And the last one, maybe I have a discussion more open-ended about thinking about change management, maybe even a little bit about your own career as change is happening in the industry. And of course, hands-on labs, far and away one of the best resources we have at VMworld. And so I highly encourage you to spend time at the HOL. So that's the end of the presentation. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to being with us here today. Hopefully this has given you a good overview of our strategy of where we've been and where we're going with hyperconverged infrastructure. But I've got one more thing, which is the prizes. So if you win the prize, in the back is where you'll go sign something to go take your prize. And to go find your prize under your chair, look under your chair, and there should be you're a winner, there's a golden ticket. You can take your golden ticket out to the back and be the winner. Thank you again for being here today.